All right. I want to do something a little different. I'm not usually huge on like top 10 lists. I'm not really good with that kind of stuff. I really like so much stuff, and I'm very bad at like, I like this more than I like this. That's just not my kind of thing. I mean, Halloween's been my favorite film, my favorite like horror movie since I was such a small kid that it's just kind of this nostalgia pick at this point where it's like, well, what's your favorite horror movie? And it's like, well, Halloween. I don't even have to think about it because it was like the first one I saw. It's what got me into the genre, this and that. So I always pick it. Lord of the Rings is my favorite films of all time. That actually earned its place because I was older when I saw it and it didn't have the nostalgia and whatnot. And nothing's been able to beat it since. But yet again, I think now that it has that nostalgia thing, I don't think there honestly is anything better than those. But whatever, doesn't matter. Anyway, so now this is going to be a top 10 list for me personally, and these are films that I consider to be lesser known. Now, what is lesser known to me may not be lesser known to other people, vice versa, I mean, whatever. I was thinking about it when I was sitting down. I was sitting there like, well, what's lesser known exactly? Like, to the mainstream audience or to the horror community? And I'm trying to do one that's lesser known to the horror community because something like, Grave Encounters or The Den or House is October Built or Creep, those are great found footage movies, but I feel like everybody in the horror community knows of those movies or have seen them. And then obviously all the big stuff like the Paranormal Activity movies, Last Exorcism, The Visit, a lot of those big. Though I think those are all great. The ones that I just mentioned, I'm a big fan of the Paranormal Activities. I know that the found footage genre doesn't work for a lot of people. They hate it. They think it's this and that. I think it's cool. I think it's a really nice, fresh kind of way to tell a story because the horror genre does feel very tired to certain people. It's most people actually, and it's just another way to explore the genre. I mean, what's wrong with that? I don't know what everyone has so far against it. I guess it's just because the quality of films are being cut down because everyone's like, well, I have a camera and we don't even need to worry about if we see each other in the mirror or, we don't even have to worry about lighting because it's documentary style, it's amateur and I get that. And there's a lot of that shit out there. There's a lot of garbage and you really kind of have to, wade through it to find the good stuff. And I get it, but that's true of, regular type films as well. I look at garbage all day online. There's thousands, way more than found footage, way more out there that are just normal type, shot films, and they're garbage. So people bashing found footage for that specific reason, it's like, really? Like, there's as many bad films out there in any format. So any style, anything. So I personally think the genres. So anyway, let's get to the list. I'll talk about that shit all day. Anyway, I think that my favorite of them is The Last Exorcism. Like, of all of them, just something about that movie really, the acting from both, Cotton and the girl who's possessed. I can't think of her name. Ashley Bell. That's the actress's name. She's fucking phenomenal in that movie. There's so much good humor in this and that. It's PG-13, weirdly enough. So is The Visit. And I thought that was excellent. M. Night Shyamalan's return. Even though I've almost always liked everything he's done. I avoided 2 movies of his I didn't like. That I didn't think I was going to like or whatever. The Last Airbender and the After Earth. I just avoided those because I was like, I won't like those. And I didn't see them, and I've liked every other one of his films. Anyway, so now getting into the top 10. Let's do this. So I have this one being the first one I want to talk about because I feel like this is the most untalked about found footage movie. That's awesome. Lunopolis is just such a cool fucking found footage movie. It's this faux documentary, like the majority of these. And it is about these filmmakers who stumble upon, I don't even know if they're filmmakers. It's been a little while since I saw it, but it's these guys who stumble upon these people who worship the moon, and there's a secret that they're guarding, and things go awry from there. It's really cool. It's really unique. Lots of twists and turns. Cool shit. I try to recommend it to anybody who's like, oh, I like found footage, and I'm like, and I want something that's lesser known. I've seen The Den. I've seen this. I've seen that. And I'm like, oh, this one no one's ever heard of and no one ever talks about. So absolutely, Lunopolis. Check that one out. So, The Possession of Michael King. This is another one that I rarely ever get to see talk about. I think it's such a cool movie. I love the concept. I love the jaded. He doesn't believe in an afterlife. He's basically trying to prove that it isn't there. It's kind of one of those things where he's like, he wants to prove it's there, but he doesn't believe in it at all. So he goes and he has like every single kind of ritual done on him, like voodoo and this and that, to prove it's all bullshit. And then obviously things start to happen. It reminds me a lot of 1408, where Cusack's character has his daughter die, and he goes in to try to prove that ghosts are bullshit because he wants to prove that they aren't. But then when he finds it, he doesn't like what he finds. Same kind of thing. And I love 1408. I've seen it an ungodly amount of times. Next up, The Conspiracy. Now, this is a movie that actually kind of starts off, like the first, 10, 15 minutes or something is very zeitgeist. If you haven't seen Zeitgeist, it's a documentary about, conspiracy theories like 9/11 and religion kind of present. And it almost follows that to a T. And it's a lot of stuff that I personally kind of buy into a little bit. That's a totally different topic, doesn't matter. So it really kind of had me in that, like, oh shit, they threw this in, they threw that in, I believe that, or at least I semi-believe that. And then the cults that they're following, the thing that they're trying to follow to figure out what's doing all of this is really cool. Lake Mungo. This is a movie I feel like the horror community knows decently. Like, this is a kind of a, I get some from this side, I get from the, they're like, I've never heard of that. And then some are like, oh, I love it. Anyone I've talked to who's in the horror community does love this movie, but there's been a lot of people I've talked to who don't. So this is where I was kind of like, oh, this is like The Den. I didn't put The Den on this list because that's another one, but I feel like it's starting to become more known. And like Mungo's one, I feel like it's becoming a little less known as time has went on. Really cool faux documentary. Not a lot happens in this movie at all, but it very much feels real, and it has such an eeriness to it. It just, for some reason, even though it's fake, all of these are fake. I got into a fight with somebody once that the Poughkeepsie tapes was real. I had to ban her from my group. It was the only person I've ever banned. And it wasn't because I was being a dick, like, oh, you think it's real, you're dumb. No, she tried to tell me I was an idiot. And I was like, I'm an idiot? Like, you don't even know what you're talking about. It's none of these are real. God, please, nobody fucking believe any of these are real. Next one is Mr. Jones, and it is never talked about. It's another PG-13 one. It's funny how many are making this list, because usually I'm not a huge fan of PG-13 movies, but for some reason in the found footage genre, it definitely works. Can work more often, it seems. This is about this couple that go out in the middle of like this cabin and out in the woods, and they're trying to find this guy, Mr. Jones, who does all these weird sculptures out in the middle of nowhere. And this movie has, and then obviously they think they find him. This movie has such nightmarish imagery throughout the movie. Like, the last half of this movie feels like a nightmare. Almost the whole thing does, but especially that last 10 or 15 minutes, it's so nightmarish, and you feel so dreamlike and weird, but not overdone to where you're like, okay, what's going on? Like, you definitely know what's going on. You're grounded while you're watching it, but it's unsettling because it does feel like you're inside somebody's nightmare, and it's just such a great feeling. And I can't not talk about this when I bring up this movie. The girls' boobs, the girls' tits in this movie are out of control amazing. You don't ever get to see them. PG-13, damn you. But fuck, you will definitely be catching yourself peeking at them a little too much. Next up is Mockingbird. This was a movie that pretty much I definitely talked to a decent amount of people who have seen it here and there, and the overall consensus on it from most people I talked to is that they don't like it, and I think they're fucking crazy. I thought this movie is really cool. It's good. It's inventive. It finally, it's one of the, I've seen it a few times since, but at the time when I saw this movie, I had never seen any found footage movies do it, and it was something I wanted done so many times. And it is where it gives you an explanation for why they're not shutting the camera off. There's so many times where you watch these movies where you're just like, they wouldn't be filming anymore at this point. It's ridiculous. But in this one, they force them to continue to keep recording or they die. So they do have to continue to keep recording. And that's a great thing. I really liked the characters. I really liked the ending a lot. I really liked a lot of the, quick gags and whatnot. It just really worked for me. I don't know what everyone's problem with it was, but I thought it was cool. Definitely check that one out if you haven't seen it. I don't know, maybe you'll hate it like everyone else. That one was kind of iffy for me to put on the list because everyone seems to dislike it. But I loved it, so I'm not going to, take it off the list. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard of this movie. It's a, Bigfoot. But it's funny. At this time, there was like 5 fucking Bigfoot found footage movies released all at once. Like, the Willow Creek one by Bobcat, which a lot of people seem to like. I didn't like it at all. I thought the ending was the stupidest fucking thing I ever saw in my entire life. Some people love it, good for them. And then there was like Bigfoot, like Lost Coast Tapes or something, and then another few, I can't even remember what they're called anyway. I didn't like it. They were okay or not good. And then Exists came out. And if I remember correctly, this is done by the guy who did Blair Witch Project, who had worked with Sanchez. And this is definitely, God, by far the best Bigfoot found footage movie. Next up is a movie that it's definitely gotten some attention. I think you've probably heard about it. Yet again, this is another one of those movies that you might have passed by a few times. Probably recognize the cover. But a lot of people I talk to haven't seen it. And it's about a guy who is, dying. He's a young guy. And he doesn't have a lot of time left. So they were going to do this world tour. And he decides to go anyway, even though the doctors are telling him he shouldn't. And so he and his friend go off and they get into trouble, and he meets this girl who does something to him, and he starts to change. And he starts to do things he's not supposed to be able to do. And that's all I'll say on the movie. It does take a twist that I didn't expect. It became a subgenre that I wasn't expecting. And I really enjoyed it. I thought there was lots of cool action scenes, lots of him like running around, jumping on top of things way high. Like the production value was really good, so I was pretty surprised by that. Next up is the most recent one on this list by far, The Monster Project. I saw this one very recently. You can check my review out on here. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it, except for it shocked me how good the production value was and how untalked about this was. I literally pressed play on it, not knowing what it was at all. And it was just like, what is this? This is fucking awesome. This is like the new Grave Encounters, but maybe even a little better because it's got even a bigger production value. In the last 45 minutes, like every second, there's fucking something going on. It never has a dull second. It's a great fucking movie. I definitely recommend checking that one out. And there's a cool ass dream sequence in this. Yes, a dream sequence within a found footage movie. You think it sounds stupid? It totally fucking works, and it was awesome. Last one on this list is a movie called Evidence, and it is not the 2013 one with the dude from True Blood or whatever. That has some found footage elements to it. That's what they're doing. They're reviewing the found footage. Not that one. There's another one. The year before, in 2012, a buddy turned me on to this. I'd never heard of it. I've never seen it since. I've never heard a single fucking person ever talk about it, ever. It's so cool. This is another one I'm not gonna speak a whole lot about, but it's got some really cool action pieces. It's got a lot of tension, a ton of, fun. I mean, fuck. I mean, that's really all I can say about it. It's just a good time all around. Absolutely check out Evidence. It's one that I never hear anyone talk about ever. Now, lastly, I want to give a shout out to a couple movies that I feel like are getting zero attention ever, despite them being awesome. Now, not attention. What I mean is they're not getting the credit they deserve. They were very well, promoted, and they were in the theaters. Well, one of them was, but the other one was well promoted. It was on Netflix, and that is number one, Unfriended. I think a lot of people skipped this movie because they thought it was going to be a teeny bopper thing, and it was going to be, high school drama, and it was going to be this and that. That fucking movie rules. I would put it in my top 5 probably. Definitely my top 10, but you could probably sneak into my top 5 found footages ever. Like, it is so well done. It is so well put together. It's got such a great fucking tone to it. There's so many subtle little nuances thrown throughout that you wouldn't notice unless you were truly paying attention. So if you do watch this movie, you should put your fucking phone down and pay attention, because this movie is very, very well put together. Whoever did this movie was really paying attention, and it really works. I think a lot of people went into this movie expecting it to be something it wasn't. I don't know what it was, but it just gets kind of panned, and fuck that. This movie, Unfriended, rocks the house. Another one, I'll just give it a quick mention, is The Devil's Pass. Literally every single fucking person I've talked to hates it. Every single person that I talked to when it was on Netflix. I actually almost didn't watch it because it was hated so much that I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna throw it on for a minute. And it's these people who are going, up into the Devil's Pass, where they had heard some stuff was going on. They were investigating something, and obviously things go wrong. I mean, I didn't give it a great synopsis there. I don't want to give any spoilers though, in case you haven't seen it. I think that's such a cool movie. I don't know why everyone fucking hated it so much. So I wanted to give them a couple nods. There's plenty of other found footage movies that I totally enjoyed, liked, whatever. I tried to mention all the, the absolute key ones. There's definitely some I forgot or didn't mention, but for the most part, this is it. Man, this video ran way long, but I tried to talk quick as humanly possible. So if you check out any of these, absolutely let me know.